So I think from an organizational perspective, if we just reflect on the last couple of slides Katrina shared, what does this mean for an organization? So through the Organizational Capacity Initiative, we've been trying to explore different elements of organizations, so really different components of how organizations work, and think if this element of the organization actually supported equity-oriented practice, what would it look like? As I mentioned at the beginning, there was this conversation we had about how organizations support disruption and risk taking, which we think is really important in terms of shifting organizational culture. And the reason that was really an important part of the discussion is if you think about some of the systems Katrina just spoke of, we're trying to really shift fundamental ways of operating in society. This is a quote from Sweden, and Sweden's one of those countries which a lot of us hold up as having made some significant progress in terms of reducing health inequities. And even in Sweden, they note that we're talking about issues of equality and resource allocation and equity, which are largely political decisions and largely political and which have political considerations. And they also stress that we can't do just one thing or a few things, but that across sectors, within sectors, we need to be considering things in quite diverse ways. So I think from an organizational perspective, uh, we need to think about how organizations create space which allows for, I'd argue, the level of disruption which health equity practice actually calls for. So, which allows for conversations on racism, on colonialism, on sexism, and how that influences health. So I'd like just to, before we move to invite Annette to talk about her experience and how organizations just work with are tackling this issue, I'd like to invite everyone to just think of a time when you tried to shift a practice or policy which was designed to improve health equity, which was experienced as disruptive or perceived as disruptive. You can just share that, and you can share that in ways which you feel comfortable doing so in the chat box. And as you share that, I want you to think about, for those of you who persisted, and I'm assuming a lot of you did, what helped you continue that work? What within the organization supported you to continue to, in a sense, disrupt the ways the organization functions? So there's two parts to that reflection. The first is a time which was perceived as disruptive. And the second component is what supported you in continuing. And we'll come back to your responses as we invite Annette to talk about her experience with the. So one of the things which we explored as part of this project was this notion of psychological safety. And the reason we explored this is really, we started thinking about what, within the context of an organization, how could organizations create spaces where it was okay for people to raise concerns around health equity, for people to say, we're noticing patterns of inequality which we think are important for us to address. And so this idea of psychological safety then became an important one for us to explore.
Hi there.
Hello, Annette.
Hi everyone. Sumi, feel free to finish off your thoughts, and then I can jump in.
Absolutely, thank you. So I'll just what we'll do is I'll just continue this piece, and then I think we'll still flow quite nicely.
Excellent,
and
thank
so
you.
Psychological safety, perfect. Well, this idea that team, so really your most immediate team was safe for interpersonal risk taking. So a lot of the times when we talk to folks who are doing health equity work in ways which we think are exemplary and we can learn from, they often talk about the importance of courage and risk taking. So people will talk about, I had to have the courage to persist, courage to go on. And I think courage is really related to the idea that you're in a space where you can take that interpersonal risk. At a team level, really, what psychological safety says is if someone speaks up, they won't be punished, they won't be embarrassed, and the team itself will not reject the person for raising this idea or this practice, which may not be how the team normally functions, but which is worth exploring. Psychological safety really requires that there is some trust and respect across team members, and this can exist even in groups of people who don't know each other very well, who don't work with each other very often. But really, the things which we can do to build these ideas of this environments which are psychologically safe. And so, if you're, a leader, a manager, someone who's trying to facilitate these kinds of conversations with your teams, a couple of things to keep in mind is really ensuring that people can ask questions without looking stupid. You can ask for feedback without looking incompetent. So, the saying, "There's no silly question," I think really matters here for psychological safety. And also, I think on the flip side is we can raise issues, we can be critical, we can raise issues about what's not working without appearing negative. And that third piece really, for me, if I reflect on my experience, I think that one really resonates because I think a lot of times for folks who are often raising these kinds of concerns, it's often perceived as, oh, that's just, you're not being supportive, you're not being a team player, you need to just, toe the party line and move on. So I think being able to raise concerns without appearing negative is a really important one. And if we're thinking about the importance of changing what we do, that last bullet on being able to suggest ideas which are innovative, which are different from how we normally work, without being perceived as completely disrupting the organization. I think it's leadership becomes really important when we think about this. And we talk about really leaders in complex ways, and I really believe that we all lead from our different positions. But here, in the context of organizations and teams, that most immediate leadership is really important. So, as a leader, it's important to be clear that it really is a shared responsibility to create that environment which supports learning, which supports risk taking, which supports people to put forward really bold ideas. And also, as a leader, it's important that you're able to to model that for others on the team. So not just, this is where you have to, do as you say, and really walk the talk. So the ways I've seen health equity leaders do that is really being able to share times when, they've tried things and they haven't quite worked, and being able to share what they have learned from those experiences. I think this is a really good point to just see some of the examples which are being shared in the chat box. So Vanessa is sharing an experience where she shared her own social location and invited others to do the same. And this was perceived as disruptive because the person she was talking to did not want to acknowledge his own privilege. And so then it provided her with a space to actually engage in a conversation about systems of privilege, things like implicit bias, and at least it provided a space for some engagement. I'm just going to read a few more examples we're hearing. So someone else is sharing an example where she brought inequities to the table in terms of the way they operate, in terms of policy fails. And in that case, she was met with understanding and appreciation, but they also had some trouble imagining what could be different.